Hi, it's Mr. Mac, and in our second of this series, Math Skills You Need, we'll be solving linear equations.
This is Mr. Mac. He can explain things really well and is a lot of fun to watch. You can subscribe to Mr. Mac's Physics channel. You will find mathematics problems, science demonstrations, astronomy and space pics, physics calculations and simple explanations of advanced.
Here's some math skills you need, and the second one is about solving linear equations. Here's a picture of me helping out at a place called Cornerstone in Burrabadine, just west of Dubbo in the central west of New South Wales. And fence posts and fencing will come into one of the questions a little bit later on. This is very practical. These are skills you need. What we're learning to do is to solve problems involving linear equations, and we'll be able to rearrange linear equations and use arithmetic operations to solve them to find the unknown. And just to remind yourself about what those arithmetic equations are: plus, minus, times, divided by, and equals. And here's worked example 1. Solve the following equations to find the unknown pronumeral. The first one, part A, is 2x equals 14. Now, some of you can already see an answer and guess it and write it down, but I'm going to go through this step by step and build up to the more complex questions. So if it's easy, that's good. Follow along as we move ahead. Remember, a mathematical equation has an equal sign between two equal expressions. We never want to make the equal sign lie. It's a good idea to line up equal signs one under the other, as we saw in our last video. So 2x equals 14. We want to divide both sides by 2, and I've written that in red with a divided by 2 underneath the 2x and a divided by 2 underneath the 14. The idea is what you do on one side, you also do on the other side. So when 2x is divided by 2, we have simply x. 14 divided by 2, of course, is 7. Part B, a plus 8 equals 11. In this case, we're going to subtract 11 from both sides, and the reason for that is we don't want the number on the left. We want all the numbers to the right and the pronumeral by itself on the left. So on the left we have a, and 11 minus 8 is 3. Part C, 6 equals 10 minus b. Now in this equation, you'll see that the pronumeral is on the right-hand side. So we need to subtract 6 from both sides to get numbers over to the right. So 6 minus 6, of course, is 0, and 10 minus 6 is 4. And we leave the minus b until we do the next operation. And the next operation is, of course, to add b to both sides. And when we add b to both sides, on the left-hand side we have b, on the right-hand side we simply have 4. And that's the answer. So here's worked example 2. And you can see on the top right-hand side, I've put a table with the letters BODMAS, BODMAS, in the first column. And these are the order operations when we do arithmetic. So we start with working out what's inside the brackets first. And then we do orders next with powers, square roots, logarithms, and so on. Then we work from left to the right with division and multiplication. And the reason we do that is because the order is important for division. And then we start on the left again and go through the addition and subtraction. And again, the reason why we go from left to right is because with subtraction, the order is important. For this worked example, we're going to solve the following equations to find the unknown pronumeral. And the first one, part A, 2 brackets s minus 5 close brackets equals 18. And the first thing we're going to do is to do the opposite operation. Now, 2 brackets means 2 times whatever's in the brackets. And so we're going to divide both sides by 2. We do the opposite operation. When we divide the left-hand side by 2, we're left with what's inside the brackets, which is simply s minus 5. And on the right-hand side, 18 divided by 2 is 9. Now we want to move all the numbers to the right, so we're left with the pronumeral by itself on the left. So we want to add 5 to both sides. When we do that, on the left-hand side we have s, on the right-hand side 9 plus 5 equals 14. For part B, Just remember, we're solving the equation and we do the inverse operation, like we're unthreading some sewing. 3t plus 2 equals 23. Well, let's first of all take 2 from both sides. And on the left-hand side, we're left with 3t. And on the right-hand side, 23 minus 2 is 21. Now we want to divide both sides by 3, leaving t on the left equals 7. And that's worked example 2. For worked example 3, we're going to have two-step equations. It says solve the following equations to find the unknown pronumeral. Part A has v on 2 plus 6 equals 28. And so we want to subtract 6 from both sides. When we do that, we're left with v on 2 on the left-hand side. And 28 minus 6 is 22. Now we want to multiply both sides by 2. And we're left with v on the left and 44 on the right, so v equals 44. For part B, remember we want to make the unknown or the pronumeral the subject, which means it's by itself on the left. And you can see part B is a little bit more complicated. So let's work through this step by step. First thing we'll do is swap sides. That's an easy way to get the pronumeral on the left-hand side. So now we've got a minus 10 on 3 equals 12. Let's multiply both sides by 3, and that effectively gets rid of the 3 on the bottom line on the left. So we have a minus 10 on the left equals 12 times 3, which is 36. And now you can probably see the next step fairly easily. We want to add 10 to both sides. When we do that, we have a equals 46. These are two-step equations. Well, what happens if we have a pronumeral on both sides? Well, here's worked example 4. Again, we solve the following equations to find the unknown pronumeral. The first one, part A, says 2a plus 4 equals 5a minus 8. What we need to do is to collect like terms, those are the ones that have the same pronumeral, with the pronumeral on the left-hand side by itself. So in the first one, you can see there's a 5a on the right and a 2a on the left. So let's take away 5a from both sides. But then what do we do with the number 4? Well, as we saw in the previous example, we will take it away. And what we do on one side, we do on the other side. So minus 5a minus 4, we do that for both sides of the equation. When we do that on the left, we get minus or negative 3a. When we do that on the right-hand side, we get minus or negative 12. Now we could just eliminate the minuses on both sides because it's just effectively multiplying both sides by negative 1. But we can do it all in one step by simply dividing by negative 3. When we divide the left-hand side by negative 3, we're left with a. When we divide the right-hand side by negative 3, we're left with positive 4. Remembering a negative divided by a negative is a positive. For part B, 10v plus 2 equals 8v minus 4. We again want to take the 8v away from the right-hand side, so we minus 8v, and we minus 8v from both sides. We want to take the 2 away from both sides, so we minus 2 from both sides. And it may look a little funny putting all these symbols in red underneath, but now we work vertically. So 10v minus 8v is 2v, and 2 minus 2, of course, is nothing. 8v minus 8v, of course, is nothing. Negative 4 minus another 2 is negative 6. So now we have 2v equals negative 6. Divide both sides by 2, and we're left with v equals negative 3. Let's try a word problem. And you can see here is a photo of an orchard around Darks Forest. They grow beautiful apples there. They make beautiful apple cider and wonderful apple juice. And there's horse riding in the area where my daughters go horse riding. But here's the word problem. A farmer wants to construct a new fence with 3 strands of wire around a rectangular orchard. Wire comes in rolls of 500 metres length. After construction, there was leftover a length of, the leftover length was 700. I'll read that again. After construction, the leftover length was 170 metres. That should be the. So the length of the orchard is 6 metres longer than its width. Find the dimensions of the orchard. Now, when we see a word problem like this, I got a little tongue-tied, we may get a little confused. That's okay, we take it slowly and step by step. So we need to write down what we see in the question in mathematical terms. And the first thing we want to do is to say, well, let W be the width of the orchard. It's not given in the question. Then the length, it says the length of the orchard is 6 metres longer than its width. So the length equals W plus 6. The perimeter then, remember the perimeter is found by twice times the addition of the width plus the length. So in brackets, W is the width, W plus 6 is the length. So those are in brackets and we put a 2 out the front. That's the perimeter. If you don't believe that, just think about it as W plus L plus W plus L and replace the L with W plus 6. And we want to simplify that, so it's 4W plus 12. Remember, it's 2 times everything inside the brackets. The next bit of information we're given is that there are 3 strands. So that perimeter, the amount of wire that we need is 3 times that. And again, we want to multiply out the brackets. 3 times 4W is 12W. 3 times 12 is 36. And then we're told that there's leftover to make up the roll. The leftover is 170 metres. So we put all that together, simplify it, and make that equal to a roll of wire, which is 500. So 500 equals 12W, and we just added 36 and 170 to get 206. And there's our equation. Now we're in familiar territory. We know how to solve that. It's a simple linear equation, and it'll take 2 steps. But please, before we go into the next slide, just review what we've seen here. You can pause the video and go back and follow my explanation about that. So the equation is 500 equals 12W plus 206. We want to solve that equation for W, which means we want to take 12W from both sides. When we do that, notice what happens on the left. 500 stays there and we have an extra term, that's what it's called, an extra term, negative 12W. On the right-hand side, the 12W seems to have disappeared and we're just left with 206. Remember, we want to get numbers to the right, so we'll take 500 away. When we do that, on the left-hand side, we're left with simply negative 12W, and then 206 minus 500, you may want to use a calculator for this, is negative 294. Now divide both sides by negative 12, and we're left with W on the left and 24.5 metres on the right. Now what does that mean? This is a real-world example. Started as a word problem, we want to finish with words. So the length, W plus 6, is 24.5 plus 6 metres, which is 30.5 metres long. And the width, of course, we're given is 24.5 metres. So the dimensions are there. And that's how we solve a word problem. Well, that was solving linear equations. Now we want to put those to good use by graphing linear relationships. And that's in our next video. I'm Mr. Mac. Thanks for watching.